nobody's awake. This side of the room's awake. The other side isn't. If you have your Bibles, turn again to Genesis chapter 16. We will finish up here. Genesis chapter 16, beginning with verse 7. Genesis 16, beginning with verse 7, Moses writes for us, "The angel of the Lord found Hagar by a spring of water in the wilderness. The spring was on the way to shore. And he said, 'Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?' She said, 'I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai.' The angel of the Lord said to her, 'Return to your mistress and submit to her.' The angel of the Lord also said to her, 'I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude.' The angel of the Lord said to her, 'Behold, you are pregnant. You shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, and his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he shall dwell over against all of his kinsmen.' So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, 'You are the God of seeing.' For she said, 'Truly, here I have seen him who looks after me.' Therefore the well was called Beer Lahai Roi. It is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. All right, we pick up where we did last week. Sarah thought that she was going to fix God's plan that hadn't worked. She was going to have a child by her servant, so she gave her servant to Abram, and they got married technically, and she was going to have a child, and Sarah was going to take the child, and this was going to be the one that was promised, and everything was going to work out. Happy, happy, joy, joy, because we were going to help God, because obviously he had dropped the ball and messed everything up. And as it says, the best laid plans of mice and men. Or as we used to say in the military, the best laid plan falls apart 2 seconds after initial contact. So Abram, instead of being a man, just tells Sarai, his wife, "Hey, look, Hagar's in your hands. You just do whatever you want to her." And of course, Sarai was just so polite and just treated her with such dignity and honor and grace, and was so sweet to this pregnant woman who was going to bear the child whom she was not going to share with her mistress. Sarai was just the pillar of kindness. Yeah, not going to happen. It says that she treated her harshly, and so Hagar hit the road, literally. Now let's do a little geography and a little theology, and then we'll deal with the rest. A little geography. Shur is on the borders of where Abraham was. If you look at one of your maps in the back of your Bible, you'll see Abraham was living in a desert region, and Shur was at the very boundary of Canaan and Egypt. So Hagar is headed home. She is running as fast as she can in the opposite direction of where Abram and Sarai are. And so she's out. She's gone. Well, she runs into an individual. Don't like this thing to begin with. Do I really need it? You can hear me in the parking lot. Theology this morning. Let's get back on track. The angel of the Lord. Everywhere you see this in the Old Testament, it is the exact same person. Okay? It is a pre-incarnate manifestation of Jesus Christ. Let me translate that out of theologicalese into English. It's Jesus before he was born. Okay? I get the looks that I usually get, and that's fine. Why? Because he makes statements that only God can make. He does things that only God can make. Now, the very next thing that's running through your minds, because I can see the wheels turning, is he going to be through in time for lunch? Yes. The second thing that's running through your mind is why, because that's how God wanted to operate. So, Hagar has an experience with Jesus. This is not an unusual thing. Let's be completely honest. Even in the Gospels, did Jesus do things conventionally? No, he didn't. He touched lepers. He talked with Samaritan women. Women supported his ministry, which was an unusual thing. I mean, no disrespect, ladies. He raised people from the dead. He rose from the dead. I mean, doing things conventionally is not the norm. So he sees Hagar, and he asks, as usual, what are you doing? Where are you going? I'm fleeing from Sarai because she was being terrible to me. But this whole thing boils down into 2 points. Point 1 is this: Hagar's status in Abram's house and the future of her son. Hagar will have status because her son will be the firstborn. Isaac is the child of promise, but Ishmael is the firstborn. Right? We'll talk about the status of him in a moment. The angel of the Lord tells her to do the most horrific thing known to man. You have made somebody mad. Whether it's your fault, their fault, or the dog's fault, it does not matter. They have made somebody close to you mad, your boss mad, your teacher mad. You have to go back and deal with it. And you don't want to do it. I had a preacher friend one time. I've told you the story. Forgive me if I have. We were in seminary together. He went to pastor a church. The fellowship hall, there was a beautiful grandfather clock. It broke. It was beautiful. He was going to move it so that it wouldn't be taking up space. So he moved it and put it in the closet. Wednesday night, went through, and what usually happens is that when preachers do things, rarely do they find out about it until after action has been taken. He thought everything was going well the next Sunday morning. Not the deacons. The deacon wives cornered him. There are a few things in the world for a preacher that are scarier than the deacon wives, not in this church, but in other churches. And deacon wives here are beautiful, wonderful ladies that would never do this to me. They cornered him and told him that they were going to fire him. The deacon wives were going to fire him because Brother so-and-so gave that clock 100 years ago, and it had always been there, and he moved it. And he had 2 choices. He could either leave, or he could go back in front of the church that very night and apologize for moving that clock. Well, my friend, who wasn't very bright to begin with, decided that the lesser of the 2 evils was to go before the church that night and apologize for moving the clock, to which he apologized for moving it without talking to people and the like. The moral of the story is, sometimes it's hard to do what Hagar had to do. She had to go live with a woman who didn't like her. Think about that for a minute. Live in a house with somebody that doesn't like you on a regular basis. She's told to go back and submit to her. That dirty word that we don't like. Everybody thinking of the passage in the New Testament where that dirty word appears that we don't like? Wives. Yeah, I'm not even going to finish that one, but caused a whole big issue in our denomination in the Baptist Faith and Message. We'll get to it eventually in our study on Sunday night. She's supposed to submit to her. She's supposed to listen to her. She's supposed to be her servant again. The angel of the Lord said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. Okay, here's where the bad news comes in all of this. There's 2 groups of people in Israel today and in the Middle East. There's Arabs and there's Jews for the most part. Okay? Jews are descendants of Abraham through Isaac. Arabs are descendants of Abraham through Ishmael. You want to know where all this started? Abram messed it all up for everybody. But the same promise that God gave to Abram about Isaac, that he will multiply them and there will be more than the sand of the seashore, you can't count them, he gives to Hagar about her son. Did God know full well what was going to happen? Yes, he knew full well that humanity was going to mess all of this up. That brothers, shockingly, were going to fight. Can you imagine siblings fighting with each other? It's just amazing. That blows my mind. I can't even conceive of it. I really can't. I have no siblings, so I have no frame of reference for this one. Unlike my wife who threw a high chair at her brother.
Other way around.
Other way around, he threw the high chair at you? Okay, I don't believe that for a minute. Okay, he threw it at her. We'll let her have that. But here's the catch. As believers, we're told, Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light, city on a hill that shines. Believers, we sometimes have to do these things. We have to be submissive. We have to understand that God knows what he's doing. The angel of the Lord said, behold, you are pregnant. Okay? Figured that one out earlier. You shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael. Ishmael means God hears. God had listened to Hagar. God had heard her crying. He understood what was going on. The child's name would be forever a reminder that God hears. Jews hear the name Ishmael and they stiffen. Christians hear the name Ishmael and they stiffen. Don't. God heard. So, guess what? When the bottom drops out of it and it makes absolutely no sense, God hears. You shall name him Ishmael because the Lord has listened to your affliction. Everything that has happened to you, God has heard it. He shall be a wild donkey of a man. He will be a hard-headed individual. Well, there's a good description before you're even born. You haven't done anything yet. Your mom's already been told you're going to be hard-headed. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. He gets none of the advantages that Isaac has. He and his mother are going to be kicked out of the household because Sarah, at the time after name change, gets mad at Hagar again, and so Ishmael and Hagar are kicked out. He will fight against everybody. It's also how he will make his living. And he shall dwell over against all of his kinsmen. Yes, he will live next to them, but he will dwell against them. Isaac and his descendants will live one way. Ishmael and his descendants will live another. Let me just put this into perspective a little more. When we get to the story of Joseph, his brothers sell him to a group of Ishmaelites, descendants of Ishmael. Jacob and Esau. Esau figures out that his father doesn't like the fact that he's been marrying Canaanite women, marries a daughter of Ishmael. It just keeps coming back and back and back and back and back. So she called the name of the Lord who spoke there. You are a God who has seen me. For she said, truly here I have seen him who looks after me. What did she see? Don't have a clue. What do you mean don't have a clue? It doesn't say. It just says the angel of the Lord spoke to her. Did a man appear to her? Quite possibly. But she had seen it. So let's take count here before we get to the name of the well, which is always fun to pronounce. She'd been given by her mistress to Abram as a wife to have a child so her mistress could take the child and have it as her son. When they found out they were pregnant, Sarai got mad because the very thing she wanted had happened, and Hagar had had some fault in this, had acted unbecomingly towards Sarai. Abram didn't stand up and be a man, said, all right, Sarah, you just deal with this. And so she treated Hagar bad. Hagar hit the road, ran smack dab into God. God says, no, go turn around, go back, be submissive. You will have a son. He will have descendants. All of this is going to work out. And Hagar, instead of panicking, instead of doing all of this, does what people generally do when they have an encounter with God, says, you are the one who sees, wow, things are not as bad as they look. Christian, let me ask you a question. Was the week perfect? Did anything go wrong? When it did and God took care of you, was your initial response, wow, it's God who sees me and things are good? Or did we panic, get upset, oh, the world is coming to an end, the sky is falling? My new theological term, Chicken Little syndrome. The sky is falling, the sky is falling. Something new in the news, oh, the world's coming to an end. And all the Christians panicked. No. When everybody prognosticates the world's coming to an end, yes, Jesus is coming back. Why do we panic? Did I miss something? Okay, maybe I did. Therefore, she called the name of the well Bir Lahai Roy, as my Hebrew professor said. We don't know how it sounded anyway, so just go for it. It literally means that God had seen. So Hagar went back and bore Abram a son. And notice now, Abram, the grandfather, grand is in large, the father of the faithful, Galatians chapter 3, the one whom all of us Christians trace our lineage back to, listened to the slave woman. Do you know how often this happens? It doesn't. Listens to the slave woman and names the child Ishmael. Very, very briefly, so that we can finish up, let me ask you a question. Does this sound anywhere vaguely familiar to anybody? Just slightly familiar? Let me see if I can make it a little clearer for you. A few thousand years later, a woman gets visited by an angel, not the angel of the Lord, but an angel. Says, you will have a child and you will name him. We'll leave it there because I don't want to ruin the rest of the story. And then Dad goes along with it, even though women didn't name the children. It actually happens twice. You may know the two, John the Baptist and Jesus. Again, God doesn't always do things the way we think of. So he names him Ishmael, God will see. And Abraham was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. Gentlemen, how would you like to be a dad for the first time at 86 years old? How would you like to be changing diapers at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're 86? Sounds like fun, huh? That ear-piercing scream running through the house. Trying to track down little Ishmael running through the tents. I mean, it just... You got to admit, it brings a smile to your face. All right, here's where all of this boils down to. Let's get this. Hagar is a picture of what we are to be. She was faithful to what God told her to do. Didn't make any sense. It was completely opposite of what she wanted to do, but she did what God told her to do, and God blessed her for it because he said that he would. Now you say, well, Ishmael, Arabs, Jews, the whole problem. Yes, but God said, you will have a son, and I will bless him. God did exactly what he said that he was going to do. As Tommy said earlier this morning, and I would have swore he was reading my notes that I typed up. You didn't, did you? Okay. He gave me this look like, why in the world would I do that? I got to listen to the sermons. I don't want to read them. I'll send them to you this week so you can check them out. We say one thing as believers, but we do something totally different. Hagar didn't. Paul says in 1 Corinthians, whatever you do it all to the glory of God, whether it's work, whether it's eat, whether it's sleep, whether it's play, whether it's talk, whether it's anything. Shoebox time is back among us, and it's wonderful. It's incredible. By the way, if anybody doesn't want to do shoebox, I know we have those who are into livestock. Come and see me. They send catalogs out where you can actually buy livestock and send it around the world. They got something for everybody. You'll be amazed. Understand that people in different parts of the world, and I use these shoeboxes as examples, live in places where they're told Christians have horns and a tail. And I'm not joking. This shows them otherwise. Christian, as you deal with the world, they will watch what you do long before they hear what you say. Lost person, that's what you are. Let me just be blunt about this. You don't know how long you have to live. God is gracious. But you have this life to make it right with Him. And that's it. There is no second chance. There is no, well, are you really sure? There's not. Again, I listened to somebody this week. Well, you don't know what I've done. Yeah, do you sin? Well, you don't know what I've done there. Doesn't really matter. Sin is sin is sin is sin. God doesn't grade sin. Jesus died so that you can live. It's really that simple. And if you're not a believer, don't walk out of this room without knowing that this morning. Please. Father, we thank you that even in the midst of a woman who was running for what seemed like her life, you stopped her dead in her tracks. That Jesus, you told her to return. You comforted her with words of joy. That this servant woman returned and you kept your word. She lived as a city on a hill, showing the grace of God. As believers, may we do that. Lord, we ask as your people that if there are those in this room who are not believers, that you would save their souls now. That if there are those in our city who are not believers, that you would save their souls this day. That if there are those in our state, in our country, those who are around the world, that they would not put their head to their pillows tonight without being Christians, because we do not know how long that we have. And eternity is long in both instances, whether we are in heaven with you or if we're in hell separated from you. We ask you, Lord, to save souls, that your kingdom may grow. Father, we thank you for that. We thank you that you are a God who sees and a God who hears. We thank you for allowing us to be in your presence this day. It's in your name that we pray.